Jonah Hale walked across the dry borderlands of Rylock 7 with slow steps. His clothes were dusty, and his bag was almost empty. He had been searching for work for many days. Every farm he passed was either abandoned or already filled with workers. The sun was setting when he finally reached a small, lonely farmhouse on a hill. Smoke rose from its chimney, and a soft blue light glowed inside the windows. It felt warm compared to the cold wind around him. Jonah knocked on the door and waited. He hoped someone kind lived here. He hoped for a chance to earn food or a place to sleep. He had no idea that this knock would change his life. After a moment, the door opened, and an alien woman stepped out. She had calm eyes and a gentle face, but there was sadness hidden in her expression. Her name was Syria Thal, though Jonah did not know it yet. Before Jonah could speak, he noticed something move behind her legs. A small child peeked out. It was a little girl with bright blue eyes who looked scared and lonely. Jonah smiled softly, trying not to frighten her. Then he bowed his head and spoke in a polite voice. "I am searching for work. I can help with repairs, cleaning, or farming. I only need food and shelter for a few days." Syria looked at him quietly. Her eyes stayed on his face longer than normal, like she was studying him. Jonah felt uncomfortable. He thought she would say she had no work, or she would reject him like others. But instead her voice came out soft and full of something he could not understand. "I do not need a worker. I need a father." Jonah froze. His mind stopped working for a moment. He wondered if he heard her wrong. A father? That made no sense. He was a stranger, a traveler with nothing in his pockets. Why would an alien widow ask a human man to become a father figure? Jonah stepped back. "I think you misunderstand. I only came for work. Nothing else." Syria did not move. She kept watching him with eyes that were calm, but also desperate. The little girl held her mother's clothes tighter. The wind around them grew colder, and the sky went darker. Jonah felt something heavy in the air, like danger hiding nearby. Syria spoke again with a trembling voice. "If you do not stay, my child, and I may not survive this week." Jonah stared at her. Her words were strange, frightening, and confusing. He did not know what danger she was talking about. He looked at the child. She was thin, and her eyes looked tired, like she had not slept well for many nights. "What do you mean, survive?" Jonah asked. "Are you in trouble?" Syria hesitated. Her lips shook like she was scared to explain. Finally she said, "Come inside. Please. It is not safe to talk at the door." Jonah followed her inside, because something in her voice felt true. The house was small but cozy. Yet there were strange things too. He saw metal bars on the windows from inside. He saw scratch marks on the walls like claws had dragged across them. He saw tools and weapons placed ready near the table. This was not the home of a normal widow. This was the home of someone who expected danger at any moment. The little girl sat near the fireplace, hugging a small wooden toy. She did not smile. She watched Jonah with quiet fear, as if she expected him to disappear or leave them behind like someone had done before. Syria poured water into a cup and placed it in front of Jonah. Her hands were shaking. She sat down across from him and took a deep breath. "My husband died protecting us," she said. "Since then someone has been looking for my daughter. They come at night. They leave marks to warn us. They do not enter yet, but they will soon." Jonah felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "Who is coming for you?" Syria looked toward the window. Shadows moved outside in the distance. They were silent, but Jonah felt them somehow. "Raiders," she whispered. "They want my daughter for something I cannot explain. And I cannot fight them alone." Jonah understood the fear in the room now. He understood why she had metal bars on the windows. He understood why the child looked scared. But he did not understand his part in this story. "Why ask me to be a father?" Jonah said. "I am not strong. I am not a fighter. I am just a man looking for work." Syria slowly lifted her gaze. She spoke very softly. The raiders fear humans. Your presence here may stop them. If they believe a human protects this home, they will hesitate. Jonah felt his heartbeat slow, then speed up again. This was not normal work. This was a dangerous request. Yet he could not ignore the fear in Syria's eyes or the way the child kept staring at him like he was the only hope left. Syria said, "If you stay even for a few days, maybe they will not attack. Maybe my daughter will live." Jonah looked at the fire. He looked at the small child. He looked at the deep sadness on Syria's face. He did not know what choice he had, but he knew one thing clearly. Walking away would haunt him forever. Jonah stayed silent for a long moment after Syria finished speaking. The fire cracked softly in the corner of the room. The child Lyra sat close to it, hugging her toy and watching Jonah with wide, fearful eyes. The air felt heavy, as if the house itself remembered something painful. Jonah finally nodded slowly. He agreed to stay for one night only so he could understand the danger more clearly. Syria let out a weak breath of relief and guided him to a small table where she placed simple food. Jonah ate slowly while studying the strange marks on the walls. Some scratches were long and deep, like something strong and sharp had dragged across the surface. Other marks looked burned, as if a heated metal tool had been pressed there. Jonah wondered what kind of raiders would leave such signs. He wondered how many nights Syria and Lyra had sat here praying that these creatures would not break in. When they finished eating, Syria showed Jonah the rooms of the house. Every corner had some kind of protection. Heavy locks on doors, reinforced window frames, ropes tied to alarm bells. Jonah realized she had built all of this alone. She must have been living in fear for a very long time. Yet she still moved with quiet strength, even though her hands shook. Lyra followed Jonah everywhere he went. She kept close to the walls and peeked around corners before stepping forward. Jonah noticed she always checked the windows first, as if expecting someone outside. When she saw Jonah looking, she quickly looked down as if she had done something wrong. He knelt beside her and spoke gently. "It's all right. You are safe for now." But Lyra only whispered a single word. "Are we?" Jonah had no answer. He wished he did. As night grew deeper, Syria lit dim blue lanterns. Outside, the wind hit the house in slow waves. Jonah checked the front door and felt the wood. It was thick and cold. He wondered how many nights Syria had stood here, with a weapon in her hand, hoping the door would hold. Syria finally spoke again, in a tired voice. "You must be wondering why the raiders want my child." Jonah nodded. "Yes, if I am going to help even for one night, I need to know the truth." Syria sat down beside the lantern light. Her face looked older in the glow, not by age but by burden. She began to tell Jonah about the history of her family. Her husband Fallon had once been part of a noble clan on another moon. The clan had enemies, and when they discovered that Syria and Fallon had a child, they sent raiders to test the new bloodline. Lyra was rare in some way Syria did not fully understand. She said the raiders believed Lyra could be worth a lot of power to someone cruel enough to use her. Fallon died defending them during the first attack. Since then, Syria and Lyra had been living alone on this farm far from the clan, hoping no one would find them again. But the raiders always returned. They left marks on the walls. They sent signals in the night. They circled the house like predators, waiting for the right moment. Jonah listened to every word carefully. He looked at Syria not just as a widow in danger, but as someone who had been surviving against impossible odds. He understood why she asked for help, but he still did not understand why she believed a human would make the raiders step back. Syria explained it in a low voice. "Humans fought the Marfine raiders long ago. The raiders still fear your kind because humans fight in ways they cannot predict. They avoid direct conflict with humans if possible. If they see that a human lives here, they might decide this farm is not worth the risk." Jonah rubbed his hands together. "I am not a soldier. I have never fought raiders. You might be trusting the wrong man. Syria shook her head. I am not trusting your strength. I am trusting your presence. Sometimes that is enough. Jonah wanted to believe it, but doubt stayed in his mind. He walked to the window and looked out into the darkness. The land outside the house was quiet, but not peaceful. There was a strange feeling in the air, like something unseen was searching for them. Then, he heard it. A slow crunch in the distance, like footsteps on dry ground. Jonah froze. Another sound followed. A dragging noise. Then silence. Syria stepped beside him. They are scouting again. They come close during the night. They want to see if we are afraid. Jonah felt a chill run down his back. He realized this night would not be easy. He realized that by staying here, he'd stepped into a story far bigger and far more dangerous than he expected. And as the moonlight faded behind clouds, Jonah understood something important. This house was not just hiding from danger. It was surrounded by it. Jonah barely slept that night. Every sound outside kept him awake. The soft creak of wood. The cold wind sliding against the walls. The strange crunch of footsteps in the soil. He stayed near the window for hours, watching the dark shapes move far away in the fields. They kept their distance, but they made their presence known. It felt like they were reminding Syria and Lyra that escape was impossible. When morning finally arrived, the sky turned pale silver and the shadows disappeared. Jonah stepped outside to breathe fresh air. The ground was covered with marks. Deep claw prints. Long dragging lines. The raiders had been there the entire night. They had circled the farm like wolves, studying a weak animal. Jonah suddenly understood why Syria always looked exhausted. She was living inside a silent war every day. Syria walked out holding a warm cup of morning broth. Her face was tired, but she was already alert. She watched Jonah examine the marks and spoke softly. They want us to fear them. They want us to break before they attack. Jonah looked at her. Why not leave this place? As Syria shook her head. They would follow us. Out here we have barriers and traps. In the open we would not survive. Jonah stared at the claw marks again. The raiders were patient. Too patient. He knew they would not wait forever. Inside the house, Lyra sat at the table drawing shapes on a wooden plate. Jonah approached her, and she looked up with a shy smile. It was the first time he had seen her smile since his arrival. She showed him the drawing. It looked like 3 figures holding hands. Jonah understood what she had drawn. A hopeful family. A family she wished she had. Jonah felt something tighten in his chest. He had been alone for many years, too. Seeing a child imagine him as part of her world felt strange, yet warm. Syria joined them and began preparing simple food. Jonah watched her work quickly with practiced movements. She seemed strong, but her hands trembled when she heard sudden loud sounds. Living in fear had left its mark. After breakfast, Syria finally sat across from Jonah and decided it was time to tell him the real reason. She had begged him to stay. Humans are different from us, she said. And the raiders fear what they do not understand. Jonah frowned. I am no warrior. Why would they fear me? Because humans have a history that reaches far. A history of fighting in ways the raiders cannot predict. To them, a human is never weak. A human is dangerous even without weapons. Jonah shook his head. That is not true for me. I am just a traveler. Syria did not look away. Fear does not care about truth. Fear follows belief. If the raiders believe the child is protected by a human, they will hesitate. They will watch. They will judge if the risk is worth it. Jonah leaned back. So my presence alone is a shield? Yes, Syria said. I know this is unfair to ask, but I have no one else. The clan will not help me. They fear the raiders too. But a human standing in my doorway might be enough to stop a raid. Jonah tried to absorb her words. It felt strange that his existence alone could create fear in an enemy he had never met. But he also sensed that Syria was telling the truth. Her voice had no sign of manipulation or hidden motive. Only desperation and hope. Later in the afternoon, Jonah walked around the farm helping Syria repair fences and set up old alarms. Lyra followed him carrying small tools. She stayed close as if being near Jonah made her feel safe. Jonah found it difficult to understand why he cared so much already. Maybe it was because he saw his own loneliness in her eyes. While repairing the eastern fence, Jonah noticed something. Fresh tracks near the trees. Someone had come very close while they were inside. Someone had been watching them in daylight. Jonah called Syria over. Her face turned pale when she saw the tracks. "They are getting bolder," she whispered. They never came this close in the morning. Jonah felt anger rise in him. This was no longer just Syria's fight. His instinct pushed him to step forward between danger and the child who trusted him. Inside the house, Jonah asked, "What happens if they attack directly?" Syria answered with silence. That silence told him everything. By evening, Jonah had made a decision, though he did not say it out loud. He could not walk away from this farm. He could not leave Syria and Lyra behind, knowing danger waited outside their window. That night, as the lanterns glowed and shadows moved again outside, Jonah finally understood his role. He was not meant to be a worker. He was meant to be a warning. A human presence that told the raiders, "This home is not UFENDED." And for the first time, the house did not feel like someone else's burden. It felt like a place he was meant to protect. The next morning, Jonah woke earlier than Syria and Lyra. He stepped outside into the cold, blue light of dawn and looked across the empty fields. Nothing moved but the wind. Yet the silence felt heavy, as if something watched from a distance. Jonah realized he had spent only one night here, but his mind had already shifted. He no longer thought like a traveler. He thought like a guardian. He walked around the farmhouse checking the weak spots. Some fences were loose. The back door frame had cracks. One of the alarm bells had rusted and would not ring even if someone pulled it. Syria had held this place together alone for too long. Jonah felt a quiet responsibility building inside him. If he stayed, he needed to turn this fragile house into a safe home. Syria joined him with warm tea. She noticed the way he checked every corner, and her eyes softened. "You are already acting like the protector you do not claim to be," she said. Jonah shrugged, but did not deny it. "Someone has to make sure the raiders do not walk in again." Syria looked out across the land. "Their attacks grow closer every week. We cannot run forever. So we do what we can here." Jonah nodded and began repairing the broken alarm bell. Lyra came outside and watched him work. She held a small blanket around her shoulders, and her steps were cautious, but she seemed curious. Jonah handed her a small tool and gently explained how to hold it. She smiled again, a little braver this time. Hours passed as Jonah fixed the fence posts and reinforced the door frames. Syria worked beside him, tightening metal plates and checking old wiring. The two of them moved with silent teamwork, even though they barely knew each other. Something natural had started forming between them, trust and a shared fear. They were trying not to speak out loud. By afternoon, Jonah stepped back and looked at the house. It was still small, but now it felt stronger. The farm was still quiet, but now there were signals ready to warn them if danger came. Syria seemed surprised by how much Jonah had done in one day. He had changed the rhythm of this place. Where fear once controlled every hour, now there was a feeling of preparation. Lyra clapped softly. "The house looks new," she said. Jonah smiled. Maybe not new, but safer. But even as they worked, a shadow stayed deep inside Syria's eyes. Jonah noticed it whenever she stopped moving. There was a pain she had not told him yet. A fear greater than the raiders themselves. In the late afternoon, Jonah decided to ask, "You still seem worried. What is it that you are not saying?" Syria looked at the sky for a long moment before replying. "Every time the raiders test our defenses, they do not attack directly. They wait, they watch. They want to know when we are weakest. They will come when they are sure they can win. Jonah looked around the fields again. They felt too open. Too easy for someone to approach without being seen. Then he understood. We need to prepare for a real attack, not just another warning. Syria nodded, yes, and soon, Lyra ran up to Jonah then and tugged on his sleeve. Will you stay with us tonight? She asked. Her voice was small but full of trust. Jonah hesitated only for a moment. Yes, I will stay. When night came, the wind was colder than before. The lantern lights flickered as if reacting to something unseen. Jonah sat near the front door listening for sounds outside. Every hour he checked the windows. Syria sat across from him, sharpening a metal rod she used as a weapon. She looked tired but determined. They did not speak much, but they understood each other without words. Suddenly Jonah heard something. A faint metallic clink in the distance. Then a soft thud. He stood up quickly. Syria moved beside him, gripping her weapon. They are testing again. Closer this time. Jonah opened the door slightly and looked out. The moonlight showed fresh movement in the tall grass. Dark shapes crouched low, watching the house. They did not attack, but they wanted to be seen. They wanted Jonah to know they were ready. He closed the door gently. They are getting bolder. They want us scared. Syria looked at him and said they want us to feel trapped. But we are not trapped. Not anymore. Jonah felt something shift inside him. Protecting this home no longer felt like someone else's burden. It felt like the role he was meant to take. He stepped to the window and whispered, I will not let them harm you or Lyra. Not while I am here. Syria watched him with quiet gratitude. For the first time since her husband's death, she did not feel alone. Night arrived with a heavy silence that did not feel normal. The air outside the farmhouse was still. Even the wind seemed to step back as if it did not want to disturb what was coming. Jonah stood near the window watching the dark fields. The moon hung low in the sky, casting pale light over the land. Syria sat nearby, sharpening her metal rod one last time. Lyra slept in the small room, but her sleep was restless and filled with small whimpers. Jonah felt something deep in his chest. It was not fear but a warning. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm. He turned to Syria. Tonight feels different. Syria nodded slowly. They have been preparing for weeks. This is the night they will test our strength. Jonah checked the reinforced doors one more time. He had added metal plates to the weak spots and adjusted the alarm system. He hoped it would delay the raiders long enough for him to fight back. He did not know what weapons the raiders used, but he knew one thing clearly. He could not allow them to enter the house. Late in the night, Lyra walked out, rubbing her eyes. I heard something, she whispered. Jonah crouched beside her. It is all right. Go back to bed. But she shook her head and clung to his arm. Jonah did not force her. He understood that fear had made her heart small and fragile. Syria reached out and held her close. Stay with me, Lyra. Everything will be fine. But a loud cracking sound echoed from the field. All three froze. Jonah moved to the door and listened carefully. Another crack followed. Then a heavy thud. It was the sound of something walking, but heavier and slower than any normal creature. Syria whispered, they are here. Jonah opened the small viewing slot in the door. At first he saw nothing but shadows. Then the shadows moved. Large shapes walked across the field with silent steps. Their bodies were covered in dark armor. Their long arms curved like blades. Their glowing eyes were fixed on the farmhouse. Fine raiders. Then Jonah saw something else. One raider carried a device that pulsed with red light. They were scanning the house, testing the structure, searching for weak points. Jonah closed the slot quickly and turned to Syria. They are checking the walls. They want the easiest way in. Syria nodded and gripped her weapon. They know I am alone. They think I am weak. Jonah shook his head. Not tonight. The raiders spread around the farmhouse, forming a circle. Jonah heard them speak in their harsh language. The words were low and sharp. Then silence returned. Complete silence. Jonah felt the skin on his arms rise. The attack was seconds away. With a sudden violent bang, the front door shook. The metal frame groaned, but held firm. Lyra screamed and held onto Syria. Jonah ran to the door and pressed his weight against it. Another bang. This time stronger. Dust fell from the ceiling. Jonah shouted, "Stay behind me." But the raiders did not attack, only the door. A loud scratching noise came from the back of the house. Another alarm bell rang. Jonah realized they were trying to confuse them. They wanted to break their focus, and fear would do the rest. Jonah moved quickly from room to room, checking the windows. A sharp cracking sound came from the eastern wall. A raider was striking it with something heavy. The metal plates Jonah installed held for now, but the edges were beginning to bend. Syria stepped beside Jonah, ready to fight. "You do not have to stay," she said in a low, trembling voice. "This is not your war." Jonah stared at the bending wall. "It is now." Then the attack intensified. The raiders slammed the walls with heavy blows. Their claws scraped against the windows, leaving long lines across the glass. One raider climbed onto the roof. The entire farmhouse shook under its weight. Lyra cried in fear. Syria held her tightly. Jonah felt anger growing inside him. These raiders were not just hunters. They were tormentors. They were trying to tear apart a small family just to take a child. Jonah grabbed a metal rod he had been using earlier. It was not a real weapon, but it was something. He opened a side window and shouted into the night, "Leave them alone." The raiders stopped for one brief moment. Their glowing eyes turned toward him. Jonah felt their attention like heat on his skin. They spoke again in their sharp voices. One voice echoed louder than the rest. "Give us the child, and we spare the human." Jonah's grip tightened. He stepped away from the window. He walked to Syria and Lyra and stood in front of them, blocking them from view. "You will get nothing," he said. The raiders screamed in anger, and the final attack began. The house shook harder as they tried to break their way inside. But Jonah did not step back. For the first time in years, he felt a reason to stand and fight. Syria saw it in his eyes. Lyra saw it too. Jonah was not just a visitor anymore. He had become their shield. The attack slowed just before dawn. The raiders stopped pounding the walls, and their shadows moved back into the fields. Jonah watched them retreat through a cracked window. They had not broken the house, but they had damaged the walls and shaken everyone inside. Jonah knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Syria sat on the floor, holding Lyra close. The child was shaking, but awake. Jonah walked to them and crouched down. "They are gone for now," he said. "But they will come again." Syria nodded without lifting her eyes. Her body trembled from fear and exhaustion. Jonah could tell she was hiding something. Something deeper than the danger he had already seen. Lyra finally let go of Syria and reached for Jonah. She wrapped her small arms around him without saying a word. Jonah felt a heavy warmth in his chest. She trusted him fully now. More than he trusted himself. As the sun rose, the light crept into the damaged rooms. Jonah stood and inspected the cracks again. The raiders had almost broken through. Their next attack might finish what they started. He turned to Syria. "Syria, we cannot survive another attack like this. You need to tell me everything." She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were red but steady. She took a long breath. "You are right. You deserve to know the full truth." Jonah sat across from her as she placed Lyra gently between them. The child leaned against Jonah's side like she belonged there. Syria watched the quiet bond forming between them, and it gave her the strength to continue. "My husband, Thalon, was not just a farmer," she began. He was part of a powerful clan. A clan with old traditions and strict laws. When I married him, the other clans were angry. They said an outsider should not join their bloodline. Jonah listened closely. Syria never spoke of her past until now. He knew this was the truth she had been holding back. When Lyra was born, Syria continued. They came to test her blood. They wanted to know if she had the rare gene. A gene that could unite two rival clans and give someone great political power. Jonah frowned. And she does have it, yes, Syria whispered. Lyra is the child they have been waiting for. A symbol, a weapon, a future leader. Something they want to control. Jonah looked at the small girl beside him. She was just a child. Quiet. Afraid. Kind. How could anyone see her as a prize? Syria looked toward the window where the raiders had disappeared. The Marfine raiders were hired to take her. Some clan members want Lyra to disappear so no one can use her. Others want her alive to control her. Either way, she is hunted. Jonah felt anger swell inside him. So they killed your husband for this? Aria nodded slowly. Thalon tried to protect us. He fought them until his last breath. When he fell, I took Lyra and ran. We found this lonely farm. I hoped the raiders would never find us. But they did. And they return every year. Jonah leaned forward. But why involve a human? Why ask me to be her father? Syria clasped her hands tightly. Humans are neutral in clan politics. No clan can legally claim a child protected by a human guardian. It is one of the oldest laws among the colonies. If a human father figure stands between Lyra and the clans, they cannot take her without risking a great conflict. Even the raiders hesitate. They know attacking a human can start a war they cannot afford. Jonah felt the weight of her words settle heavily on him. So when you said you need a father, not a worker, Syria nodded. I meant it. Not for myself, but for her. Lyra needs a protector the law respects. Thalon is gone. You are our only chance. Jonah looked down at the child leaning against him. She played quietly with a small piece of cloth, unaware of how important her existence was. Jonah felt something shift deep inside him. Protecting her was no longer just a duty given to him. It felt personal. Then Syria said something he did not expect. Lyra also carries human-compatible DNA. My grandmother was half human. That is why the law works. If a human accepts her as family, the clans cannot claim her. Jonah understood now. Everything made sense. The fear, the raids, Syria's desperate request. It was not madness. It was strategy. It was survival. Jonah whispered softly. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I feared you would walk away, Syria replied. I feared the truth would be too heavy for you. But now you have seen what they want. You have seen what they will do. And still you protect us. That is why I trust you with the truth. Jonah looked out at the field again. The sun rose slowly, revealing the damage from the attack. He knew the raiders would return soon. But this time he understood exactly what he was fighting for. Not just for a house. Not just for safety. But for a child who needed a family. And for a widow who had lost everything except hope. The morning after Syria revealed the truth, the farm felt different. The air was quiet but tense, like a string pulled too tight. Jonah walked along the damaged walls, running his fingers over the deep cracks left by the raiders. He knew they would not wait long before returning. The last attack proved something important. They were no longer testing the house. They were preparing to take Lyra by force. Syria stepped beside Jonah and looked across the open field. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and both understood the same thing. Today was not a day for fear. Today was a day for decisions. Jonah turned toward her. If they come again, I will stand with you, he said. Syria answered with a soft breath. You already have. But this time they will not leave until they take what they want. Jonah looked toward the doorway where Lyra sat playing quietly with a small wooden toy. She did not know how heavy the day would be. She only knew Jonah made her feel safe. She looked up at him and smiled. That simple smile pushed Jonah to gather every bit of strength he had got. As the sun moved higher, Jonah prepared the house for the final battle. He set wooden barriers across the windows. He built traps using metal scraps. He placed alarm bells along the outer fence. Syria helped without hesitation. Together they moved with silent coordination. Every nail they hammered and every rope they tied carried the same message. We will not surrender. By midday, the wind changed direction and carried a smell Jonah recognized. Burned metal. Raider scent. Syria froze. They are coming. Jonah stood tall and stepped outside. Dark shapes appeared at the edge of the land, walking in a slow, careful formation. Their armor glowed faintly under the sunlight. They moved with deadly purpose. This time there were more of them. Twice as many as before. Their leader stood at the front, carrying a long spear shaped like a twisted claw. Syria pulled Lyra inside and locked the door. Jonah remained outside just long enough to understand what they wanted. The leader raised the spear and pointed it at the farmhouse. A loud call echoed across the field. "Give us the child." No more warnings. Jonah did not speak. He simply walked inside and closed the door. Syria stood near the back window, gripping her weapon. Lyra hid behind her, but her eyes stayed fixed on Jonah. She trusted him to make the right choice. The raiders began their approach. Their footsteps were heavy but steady. Jonah braced himself by the front door. Every sound shook through the house. The final attack had begun. The first blow hit the wall like a crash of thunder. Wood cracked. Metal bent. Alarm bells rang in every direction. Lyra screamed, but Syria held her close, whispering gentle words, even as fear filled her own heart. Jonah moved from wall to wall, checking the weak points. One raider climbed onto the roof again, shaking the entire structure. "They will break through," Jonah said. But he did not step back. Syria looked at him, her voice firm. "Then we fight together." The raiders struck again, and the eastern wall finally split open. A large armored raider forced its way through. Jonah grabbed a metal rod and charged without hesitation. The rod slammed into the creature's helmet, hard enough to throw it off balance. Syria used her weapon to strike the raider's legs, and it fell with a heavy crash. More raiders pushed inside. Jonah fought with every ounce of strength he had. His arms burned. His lungs felt heavy. But he did not stop. He fought like a man who finally had something to protect. A family. One raider grabbed Lyra's arm. She cried out, but before it could pull her, Jonah tackled it with full force, driving it into the wall. The impact shook the house. Jonah shielded Lyra with his body, taking a sharp blow across his back. Pain spread through him, but he refused to move. The raider hesitated. Its armor scanned Jonah's heat signature. It detected something strange, a human protecting a mixed-blood child. A forbidden act in raider law. The leader shouted for them to retreat. But Jonah did not hear the rest. His vision blurred as another blow struck him. Syria screamed his name. Lyra cried and clung to him as he fell to his knees. Then something unexpected happened. A treaty protocol was triggered in the raider scanning system. Anyone who risked death to protect a mixed-blood child was recognized as a legal guardian. Attacking that guardian would break ancient laws punishable by severe interstellar consequences. The raiders froze. Their leader lowered his spear. The law had spoken. Lyra was now under human protection. Jonah was her guardian. The raiders stepped back slowly and withdrew across the field. Silence fell over the broken farmhouse. Syria dropped to her knees beside Jonah. He was breathing but weak. She touched his face gently. "You saved her. You saved us both." Jonah opened his eyes. "I promised I would protect you." Lyra hugged him tightly. You are my father now, she whispered. Jonah felt something warm fill his chest. Not pain, not fear. Something else. A beginning.